Rain fell heavily on the busy city streets. The sound of water hitting metal roofs and puddles echoed everywhere. Among the crowd of rushing people, a small black girl sat on the wet pavement. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her hair was messy, sticking to her face from the rain. She held out a small cracked cup, hoping someone would give her some coins. But today, even the coins were rare. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, sharp and painful. She watched people pass by, huddled under umbrellas. Some looked at her with pity. Some didn't even notice she existed. She whispered to herself, "Just one plate of food. I just want one plate." Her voice was soft, almost lost in the city noise. Suddenly, she heard a loud announcement coming from a nearby square. A crowd had gathered around a big stage with bright lights. A man's voice boomed, "Welcome to the city talent show. Sing, dance, or perform, win money and prizes. The best performers eat well tonight." Her ears perked up. "Eat well?" she repeated quietly, hope flickering in her eyes. She looked around. The stage was full of confident kids. Some had fancy clothes, shiny shoes, and expensive instruments. They looked so perfect, so ready. She looked down at her torn shoes and dirty dress. Could she really do this? Could she really stand in front of all those people? Her stomach growled loudly. She pressed her hands against it, feeling the emptiness. Then she whispered to herself, almost daring fate, "If I sing well, will they give me a plate of food?" She took a step forward. Then another. The crowd was loud, the music was playing, and the judges sat at a long table with serious faces. They were looking at everyone who dared to step on the stage. She felt fear squeeze her chest. Her legs trembled. She wanted to run back to the safety of the street. But hunger pulled her forward like an invisible force. A boy on stage laughed at her as she tried to hide behind a small curtain. "Who's that little street girl? She looks like she hasn't eaten in days." The girl's heart sank, but she refused to cry. She swallowed hard and held her chin high. She would not let shame stop her. Not today. Behind the stage, she found a quiet corner and whispered the only words she had ever truly believed in. "I have a voice. I have a song. I can do this." She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and tried to imagine herself on stage, singing like the other kids, but better. The sound of applause from the previous performer made her heart pound even faster. The judges were clapping, nodding, taking notes. Her stomach twisted with nerves. But deep down, something stronger than fear grew inside her, hope. Just hope, one song. Maybe just one song could change everything. Then, she stepped forward. Her bare hands shook. The bright stage lights blinded her for a moment. The crowd's chatter became a roar. Every eye seemed to stare at her. She swallowed hard. Her voice trembled as she whispered, I will sing." The host's voice rang out, "Next performer, come on stage." The little girl looked at the plate of food she imagined in her mind. The hunger, the cold, the fear. And she walked forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she didn't stop. The crowd went quiet. All the laughter and whispers seemed to vanish. All that remained was her heartbeat and the question hanging in the air. Will she be able to sing well enough to get that plate of food? Her foot touched the stage, and the curtain behind her fell away. Lights shone down. The audience stared. And in that frozen moment, the whole city seemed to hold its breath. After stepping off the stage, the little black girl hurried into a narrow alley beside the talent show. Her heart was still pounding, her hands trembling. She pressed her back against the damp brick wall and closed her eyes. She could still feel the bright lights burning her skin, the heavy eyes of the crowd staring at her. Her voice, soft and raw, had wavered when she tried to sing. Was it enough? She didn't know. The alley smelled of wet garbage and dust, but it was quiet compared to the loud square. She knelt down, hugging her knees, thinking of the food she desperately wanted. "I can't fail," she whispered to herself. "I can't go home hungry tonight." She remembered the old songs her mother used to sing when she was a little girl, before hunger and loss became part of her life. Those songs had comforted her when the nights were too cold, when the city felt too cruel. She began humming one softly, almost to herself. The sound of her own voice made her feel alive, like a small fire flickering inside her. Other street kids passed by, tossing mocking looks at her. "You, on stage?" One boy laughed, showing his missing teeth. "You'll be eaten alive out there." The girl's stomach twisted. She wanted to shrink, disappear, run away. But she remembered the hunger, the emptiness gnawing at her ribs. She clenched her fists. She had a plan now. She found an old, broken box and sat on it. Pulling a rag from her backpack, she cleaned her shoes the best she could. She practiced her breathing, humming quietly. Every note, every pause mattered. She didn't need fancy clothes or instruments. She had her voice, and she would use it. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. A small dog, thin and mangy, came wagging its tail. The girl smiled faintly. She whispered, "If I win, we'll eat tonight." The dog nudged her hand as if it understood. She laughed softly, a sound full of nervous hope. Time passed quickly. The talent show continued, and she watched from the shadows. Some performers were loud, flashy, and confident. Others stumbled and fell. She noticed one boy, dressed in shiny clothes, stumble over his words. The crowd laughed, and she felt a strange sense of relief. Even the best could fail. She could do this. She practiced again, lifting her chin, imagining the crowd silent, waiting for her song. Each note she sang was stronger than the last. Her voice shook at first, but then steadied. She felt the rhythm of the city around her, the drumming of raindrops, the distant horns, the shuffling feet, and she matched it. She was no longer just a street girl. She was a singer, a storyteller, a girl with a dream bigger than hunger. Finally, she peeked toward the stage. The next performer was about to finish. The judges were scribbling notes, the crowd cheering. Her stomach growled. Fear mixed with excitement. "This is my chance," she thought. "If I do this right, everything could change." She stood, her small frame tense but ready. She adjusted her ragged dress, wiped her hands on her pants, and whispered one last mantra. "I can do this. I will do this. I must do this." Her eyes were sharp, her spirit strong. Hunger still gnawed at her, but now it was joined by determination. With a final deep breath, she stepped out of the shadows, heading toward the stage. The city noises faded behind her. All that remained was the path to the spotlight, the judges, and the plate of food waiting for her courage. Would her song reach their hearts? Could a street girl's voice truly shine on this stage? The answer lay in the next moment, her first note. The little black girl's small feet trembled as she climbed the steps onto the stage. Bright lights blinded her eyes, making the crowd blurry, like a sea of shadows. She froze for a moment, her stomach twisting with fear. The laughter of other contestants and the chatter of the audience seemed louder than ever. Every heartbeat sounded like a drum in her chest. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear into the shadows, back to the wet alley and the safety of the streets. But hunger and hope pulled her forward, step by step. One foot in front of the other. Each step felt heavier, but she could not stop now. Not when food, warmth, and a chance to change her life waited on the other side. The judges' eyes were sharp, critical. They scribbled notes and whispered to each other. The audience leaned forward, curious about the small girl who dared step onto the stage in torn clothes and bare feet. Whispers floated through the crowd. "Who is she? She looks like she's going to cry." The girl's throat felt tight. She pressed her hands to her chest, trying to steady her shaking voice. A memory flashed in her mind, her mother singing lullabies long ago. That voice had once filled her nights with comfort. She closed her eyes and whispered under her breath, "I have to do this. I must sing, I must eat tonight." A judge, an older woman with kind eyes, leaned forward. She whispered softly, "Just sing from your heart, little one. That is all that matters." The girl opened her eyes and felt a small spark of courage ignite inside her. One note, just one note. She could do that. She lifted her hands and looked at the audience. Faces stared back, some curious, some skeptical, some mocking. Her stomach growled, a sharp reminder of why she was here. The hunger inside her was louder than the fear. She took a deep breath, trembling, and began to sing. The first note came out weak, almost lost. A few people in the crowd whispered and laughed quietly. But she did not stop. She focused on the memory of her mother, the nights of cold streets, and the hope that this song could change everything. Slowly, her voice grew stronger, rising above the murmurs and whispers. Her hands shook, but her voice carried emotion, pain, hunger, longing, and hope. Each note was a story of survival, of dreams that refused to die. The crowd began to quiet down, listening. The laughter faded. Even the other performers watched in silence, surprised by the strength in her small frame. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but she ignored it. Her eyes fixed on the plate of food she imagined waiting for her. The first note had been shaky, the second slightly better, and now by the third, she felt her confidence grow. She began to feel the rhythm of the music, her voice weaving through the quiet of the audience like a small flame in the dark. The judge smiled faintly, nodding to herself. The girl felt a rush of pride, mixed with fear. She was still a little street girl, hungry and alone, but here, on this stage, her voice mattered. Maybe, just maybe, it could earn her more than a plate of food. Her final breath trembled as she prepared for the highest note. The audience leaned forward, holding their breath. Every eye was on her. She knew that this moment could change everything or nothing at all. Her small chest rose and fell. One final note, one chance. She opened her mouth, and the voice that came out was clear, strong, and beautiful, unexpected from such a small, ragged girl. The silence that followed was deafening. Would the crowd cheer or laugh? Would the judges recognize her courage and talent? The answer was about to unfold, and her life hung on that single, trembling note. The little black girl's voice filled the stage, soft at first, then rising with strength and emotion. The audience leaned forward, eyes wide. Some whispered, some gasped. She could feel the music flowing through her, a rhythm that matched her racing heartbeat. For a moment, it felt like nothing else existed, just her song and the hope it carried. Then, suddenly, a rotten tomato flew from the edge of the crowd, hitting the side of her head. She stumbled, startled, the sound echoing through the stage. The audience gasped. Some laughed cruelly. Her chest tightened, and fear froze her legs. Hunger had pushed her here, but shame and embarrassment made her want to run. Tears pricked her eyes. And for a moment, she thought of escaping. Running back into the rainy alley, hiding from the cruel world. Her small hands clenched, her voice caught in her throat. Maybe I'm not meant to sing. Maybe I'm not meant to win. But then she remembered the plate of food she imagined waiting for her, the empty stomach that had driven her to this stage. She remembered her mother's lullabies, her dreams, and every cold, lonely night she had survived on the streets. And in that instant, a spark ignited inside her. Hunger had pushed her to the stage, but courage and hope would make her stay. She wiped her tears and lifted her chin. The rotten tomato had fallen at her feet, messy and useless. It would not stop her. She began to sing again, her voice stronger than before, carrying not only the song but her story, the story of every hungry, lonely child who dared to dream. The audience, surprised by her resilience, fell silent. Some faces softened. Even the boy who had laughed at her earlier watched, astonished. Each note she sang painted a picture of her life: fear, struggle, hunger, but also hope, courage, and an unbroken spirit. The judges leaned forward, exchanging glances. One of them, a stern man with a pencil poised over his notebook, whispered to the other, She has something. Not just talent, but heart." The girl did not hear it, but somehow she felt it. The energy in the room shifted. Where there had been ridicule and doubt, now there was attention and awe. She sang louder, pouring every ounce of emotion into the final lines of her song. Her small frame shook with the effort, but her voice soared. She closed her eyes, imagining the warmth of a meal, the feeling of relief, the possibility of a life where hunger did not rule her days. By the last note, the silence in the room was heavy. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the cruel kids who had mocked her before looked stunned. And then, slowly, a single clap sounded hesitant at first, but growing louder. The audience began to cheer, clapping, some even standing. Her heart soared. The stage, once a place of fear, now felt like a place where anything was possible. The girl opened her eyes and saw the judges nodding, smiling. One judge even rose, signaling approval. She had faced ridicule, humiliation, and fear, but she had survived it all and turned it into beauty. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She was still trembling, still hungry, but now there was something else: pride, hope, and the realization that courage could make her stronger than fear. The plate of food she had dreamed of seemed closer now, not just a reward for singing, but a symbol of everything she could achieve if she never gave up. The unexpected twist, the thrown tomato. The mocking laughter had almost broken her. But instead, it made her stronger. Could a small street girl truly win against the odds? Could her voice, born from hunger and struggle, move the hearts of the crowd and judges alike? The answer would come in the next moment, and her life would hang on it. The little black girl's voice now flowed freely across the stage. Every note carried a story, a memory of hunger, fear, and survival. Her trembling hands calmed as her heart poured into the song. The crowd, once skeptical, now leaned forward, hanging on every word. Even the loudest critics fell silent. She closed her eyes and sang, not just to impress, but to express. Each line was a thread of her life, sleeping under cold bridges, begging for scraps, longing for warmth, and dreaming of something better. Her voice was raw but pure, breaking hearts in the audience without even trying. A few children in the crowd wiped their eyes. Parents exchanged quiet nods, some murmuring, "She's incredible." The boy who had mocked her before looked down, ashamed. The judges sat straight, pens paused, eyes wide. They had not expected such depth from the small street girl. As she sang, her mind flashed through her past. The nights she had cried alone, the empty stomachs, the cold winds, the loneliness. But there was also the small moments of hope: an old woman sharing bread, a kind neighbor smiling, a dog waiting faithfully by her side. She poured all of this into her song, letting the emotion guide each note. Her voice grew stronger, rising above the stage, echoing into the city beyond. The lights seemed to shine brighter, reflecting off her face and illuminating her determination. Sweat and rain dampened her hair, but she didn't notice. She was no longer just a hungry street girl. She was a storyteller, a voice of courage that demanded to be heard. The highest note approached, the one that would determine the song's power. She inhaled deeply, her small chest rising, and held the moment. Time seemed to stretch. The audience leaned forward, collective breaths held. Even the judges leaned in, anticipating the sound. She released the note. It soared, pure and strong, carrying every ounce of her soul. For a moment, the world paused. No whispers, no laughter, no clapping, just her voice, echoing in the hearts of everyone listening. Some cried openly. Others smiled, moved beyond words. When the note ended, there was a heartbeat of silence. Then, slowly, a few claps started, hesitant but growing louder. The applause swelled, filling the room, bouncing off the walls, and wrapping around her like a warm embrace. She opened her eyes and saw the crowd on their feet. Faces beamed at her, some with tears. The judges nodded, impressed beyond measure. Tears ran freely down her cheeks now, but this time they were tears of triumph. She had faced fear, ridicule, and hunger, and turned them into something beautiful. She was no longer invisible. Her voice had carved a space for her in the world, however small, however fleeting. The little girl bowed deeply, overwhelmed by the sudden wave of love and recognition. The applause felt like a warm meal, like the embrace of someone who finally believed in her. Hunger still gnawed at her, but for the first time, hope drowned out despair. She realized something profound. It was not just her singing that mattered. It was her courage to stand, to try, to face the world despite everything. That courage had made her song unforgettable. That courage had made her more than just a street girl. As she stepped off the stage, the host announced, "What an incredible performance. Truly heartfelt and unforgettable." The audience cheered louder. People in the crowd were whispering her name, some even asking how such a small, humble girl could sing with so much power and emotion. Her small heart pounded. Not from fear this time, but from a rising sense of possibility. The plate of food, the warmth, the recognition all seemed within reach now. She had sung her truth, and in return, the world had listened. Could this performance change her life forever? Could a simple act of courage turn hunger into hope, despair into opportunity? The answer would soon come, and her story was only just beginning. The little black girl stood on the stage, her small body trembling, but not from fear this time. The applause had faded, leaving only whispers and the soft scribbling of the judges' pens. She looked at them, three faces, serious and unreadable. Her stomach still ached with hunger, but her heart raced with anticipation. The moment she had dreamed of, feared, and fought for was finally here, the verdict. The judges whispered among themselves, leaning close, exchanging glances. The girl tried to catch their expressions, but they remained calm, unreadable. The audience held its breath. Even the other performers who had been so confident before, now looked nervous, unsure of what was coming. Her mind raced. Did I do enough? Was my song good enough? Will they see me as just a poor street girl, or as someone who deserves this chance? Every second stretched like an eternity. Her small hands clenched at her sides, trembling. Hunger and hope battled within her chest, each one sharper than the last. Finally, the head judge, a tall man with kind eyes behind serious glasses, stood. The room went completely silent. Even the street noises from outside seemed to disappear. He cleared his throat, and the little girl's stomach twisted with tension. For courage, talent, and heart. He began, his voice slow and deliberate. Every word echoed through the hall. The winner of tonight's talent show is... He paused, and the silence was deafening. Every eye in the room fixed on her small, trembling figure. She felt her breath catch. Her hands shook. The plate of food she had imagined for so long seemed almost too close to believe. Her legs felt weak. The crowd leaned forward. Even the judges' pens had stopped moving. This little girl, the judge continued, pointing toward her, who sang not just with her voice, but with her soul. The audience erupted. Claps, cheers, and shouts filled the room. People jumped to their feet. Tears streamed down faces, strangers hugged each other, and the little girl's small body shook with disbelief. She had done it. She had truly done it. One of the judges handed her a small plate of food first. She stared at it, almost frozen, before grabbing it with shaking hands. Warm rice, vegetables, and a small piece of meat, simple, but the most precious thing she had ever held. She brought it to her lips, tears running freely, and took the first bite, tasting hope for the first time in months. Then the judge handed her the certificate and prize money. She looked down at it, still not fully believing it was real. The crowd cheered even louder. People were clapping, calling her name, smiling. Her hunger, her fear, her loneliness, all of it seemed to melt away in this one moment of recognition. The other contestants watched silently. Some stared in shock. Some nodded in respect. The boy who had mocked her before hung his head, ashamed, while others whispered quietly, acknowledging her bravery and talent. The little girl held the plate and certificate tightly. She was still trembling, but this time with triumph. Hunger had brought her to the stage, but courage had made her win. She realized something powerful. No matter where you come from, no matter how small you feel, your heart and determination could carry you farther than you ever imagined. As she looked out at the crowd, her eyes met those of the kind judge who had whispered encouragement earlier. She nodded to her quietly, a small smile breaking across her face. That simple act of belief had given her the strength to face the entire world. Could this be the start of something bigger? Could a single act of courage truly change her life? For the little black girl, the answer was clear. Tonight, she had not just won a plate of food. She had won hope, respect, and the first glimpse of a life she had only dreamed about. The little black girl walked out of the talent show hall clutching her plate of food and the certificate. Her hands still trembled, but this time from excitement, not fear. The cold night air brushed against her face, and for the first time in a long time, she felt warmth, not just from the food, but from hope. The city lights glimmered above her, reflecting on wet streets, making everything feel magical. She paused for a moment, looking at the plate in her hands. Simple food, yet it tasted like victory. She took another bite, savoring each morsel. Hunger had driven her to the stage, but courage had given her something much bigger, a sense of worth. A feeling that maybe the world could see her not as a street girl, but as someone who mattered. As she walked through the streets, neighbors and other street children noticed her. Some smiled, some cheered quietly. The small dog that had followed her through the alley wagged its tail and ran beside her. She laughed softly, feeling lighter than she had in months. The city, once loud and harsh, now felt like a place of possibilities. She thought about the journey, how fear had almost made her run away, how the rotten tomato had almost broken her, and how every step had been filled with doubt. But she had sung anyway. She had faced ridicule and hunger and turned them into something beautiful. That courage, she realized, was hers forever. When she reached her small corner of the city, she looked around. Empty streets, cold walls, shadows that had been her companions for so long, it all seemed different now. She sat down on the curb, finishing the last bite of her food. Her stomach was full, but even more than that, her heart felt full. She had won more than a meal. She had won belief in herself, in her voice, in life. A group of street children gathered around, curious about her prize. She smiled at them, holding up the certificate. "You can do it too," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "You just have to try, even if it's scary. Even if people laugh at you. One small step can change everything." Her eyes drifted upward, toward the twinkling city lights. For the first time, she allowed herself to dream bigger. Maybe she could go to school again. Maybe she could sing in front of more people. Maybe she could help other children like herself. The plate of food, the applause, the certificate, they were all the beginning, not the end. That night, she fell asleep in her small corner, the plate beside her and the certificate clutched close. Her dreams were no longer filled with hunger and fear, but with melodies, songs, and hope. For the first time, she felt that her life could change, that her voice could carry her anywhere she wanted to go. Morning came, and the city buzzed as usual. But she walked through it with a different heart. People who had never noticed her now gave small smiles. She held her head high, feeling brave and proud. She had faced fear, faced mockery, and faced hunger, and she had won. The little black girl had sung not just to survive, but to show the world that courage and talent could come from anywhere, even from the streets, even from a girl many had overlooked. Tonight, her life had changed, and tomorrow, it would change even more. And as she walked toward the rising sun, her small figure cast a long shadow on the streets, a shadow full of dreams, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. From hunger to hope, from fear to courage, her story had only just begun.